So many of you have asked how I design, how I figure out measurements, how I make graphs, and today's the day where I can finally show you how it's all done. Just a quick note, this video is how I design, not how to design, so I'm just showing what works for me. The first thing that I do, which is the most important part of the process, is creating the design. Without creating the design, you're not gonna really know what you're going to make unless you're freestyling it, you know? Sometimes I'll have an exact idea of what I want to make in my head. Sometimes I'll take out the iPad and draw out some things until I get an idea. And sometimes when I'm completely slumped, I'll just go on Pinterest or different clothing websites to get some sort of inspiration. For this video, I'll be making a sweater and a bag. For the sweater, I want it to be knit, and for the bag, I want it to be crocheted. I'm going to be making a different version of this bag because a lot of people have asked me how to do it, and I don't really want to create this exact bag over again. So I'm going to do something very similar but with a different graph just to show you how to make it. If you want to make this in particular, you can just follow along with the other graph that I use because it's basically the same exact pattern. And for the sweater, I'll be coming up with the design and the pattern on camera. So for this sweater that I want to make for this video, I want it to be either brown or gray so it can fit with all the other clothes in my closet. I want it to be slightly oversized, but not so much oversized. This sweater that I'm wearing now is a good size for reference. It goes to, like, my waist is right here, it goes to right here, which is good for the sweater that I want to make. The sleeves are good, it's not too oversized, but it is slightly oversized. And I also want to make the sweater a bit more lightweight and not like super chunky because we're going to be in spring soon. So I want to have something that's good for transitional weather. You also want to figure out the tiny details of the sweater, like what kind of stitch do you want to use, if you want it to be a sweater that brings color to your wardrobe or one that can fit with any outfit, those types of things. Now that I have a general idea of what I want the sweater to look like, I'm going to go ahead into Procreate on my iPad so I can draw out just exactly what colors I want to have, how I want the colors to look, etc., etc. And sometimes within this process, a lot of the ideas that I originally had before designing it tends to change, and I am more forgiving. Like, say, if I actually don't want brown after seeing how pink looks, I'll do pink instead. So it's time to draw out the design. Before we begin, please excuse my sweater drawing. It's the best we're gonna get right now. So as I designed, I played with the colors I initially decided on, but just to experiment, I played with the other combinations as well just to see if something would stand out a lot better than the ones I decided on. After playing around with the brown and gray, I liked how the stripes looked, so I wanted to see how stripes of multiple colors would look, and I enjoyed how this one came together. When you're working on your designs, make sure you're adding in those details visually that you want to see if you truly want them. And it's perfectly okay to go back on an idea that you thought you wanted. That's part of the process. For the bag, the measurements are going to be like my no face one here. The only difference is going to be the color and the graph I use. For the graph, there's two ways you can do it. You can either create your own if you have a specific design you want, or you can find one on Pinterest that fits your theme. I liked this Spider-Man one I found and this Hello Kitty one that I found. They were both small, which was good for my medium-sized bag. I then drew out two bags with the graphs in mind. They both came out pretty cute, but I was only going to choose one, and I think it's gonna be the Spider-Man bag. If you're someone who wants to start designing your own pieces to eventually sell them, I think the best place to sell them is on Universe, which is the sponsor of today's video. Universe is an app where you can build your own website and shop for free using your mobile device or iPad. Now, it is completely free, but if you wanted to use the Pro features, which is $9.99 a month or $71.99 a year, you can create your own custom domain, send newsletters and emails to the subscribers of your website, have even more payment options like PayPal or Cash App, and add your own code to your websites. If you are interested in 1 year of Universe Pro, you can click the link in the description box below for 50% off of your yearly membership for the first year. Now, in case you have decided to start your website but you can't figure out how you want it to look, or you don't like any of the templates, I've created 2 of my own for you to use perfectly for free. The first one I used is more of a link page, so you can have your links to like Instagram, YouTube, your website, or your portfolio, whatever links you need to add on there. And then the second template is for your shop in general. I tried to make it more knit and crochet oriented since that's what I tend to do. And if you're making knit and crochet pieces that you want to sell, then it would suit you as well. So for the first template that I created, it's the link page where you can add all of your links and everything. For what I did for mine, I first designed a little logo on Procreate, but if you don't have Procreate, you can use Sketchbook, that's completely free. And then I just added it on top. You can do something similar if you want to. And then if I scroll down right here, it's just a little information about myself and a photo of me. And then when you go down, I drew out a little link image of me. I don't know if it looks like me or not, but yeah. And then I have all of my links, and I used little yarn balls to kind of differentiate them all. And then if you click on any of the links, it'll take you there. So if I click the YouTube link, it'll take you or me to my YouTube. And then like my portfolio, I click portfolio and it just takes me straight there. But yeah, it's a basic template, but you can add different cool things to it. If you want to add more information about yourself, if you have more links you want to add, you can go ahead and do that. It's perfectly easy to do. And then for the template for the shop, it's very similar to my old template. I just kind of changed things here and there. But the first thing I have is 2 images of some pieces I made, as well as some little hearts on the side. And then I have the name of my shop. That's not going to be the name of my shop anymore, but I just used it as a little placeholder just so you can see how it would look like with like the yarn ball underneath and everything. And then I have the different places where you can go, whether it's the shop, the portfolio. I have some like a place for tutorials and links. And then if you scroll down more, there's 2 more pictures of things that I designed, as well as some links at the bottom. So like if you hit the shop button, it'll open up your different collections and stuff. Like say if you want to have a fall collection or a leg warmer collection or something like that, you can do that and it'll be all right there. But yeah, I hope you like these templates. They're completely free to use if you want to go ahead and get started with making your own website and selling your pieces. The links for these 2 templates will be in the description box below, as well as a link for 50% off of the yearly Universe Pro membership. Thank you again to Universe for sponsoring this video. Another important step is choosing the yarn. The yarn you choose dictates how long the piece will last, how durable it is, and the overall quality of the piece that you're making. For my sweater, I wanted to use a wool and acrylic blend, and I wanted to buy it online, but by chance I found a good quality yarn that fit my needs at Joann's, so I just bought a couple that I wanted while I was there, and if I need more, I'll just go back. For my bag, I'll just use acrylic yarn that I already have so that I can save money and use what's already available. I personally recommend wool blends for sweaters since it's a lot more durable as well as less itchy, and for bags, I recommend cotton yarn for durability. These are the colors that I decided on. I know they're completely different from the design, but that's also a part of the process. Like even though you decide on a specific type of color or design, sometimes you're just not going to find the yarn that perfectly matches it, so you're gonna have to kind of change it up, unfortunately. But I'm really happy with the colors that I decided on. So it is gonna be just a striped sweater with these different colors. I only bought 1 of each color for now because it was kind of impulsive, because I thought I was originally gonna order it online. So we have the yarn, and now it's time to figure out our measurements. After being certain about the design, you have to figure out what the measurements of your pieces are going to be. The way I do it is kind of like free-handed. I rarely ever do like swatches or anything or intense measuring. I know you're supposed to, but I just don't. So for like if I'm knitting the piece, I'll just knit a size that I think it's going to be, and I'll knit a couple of rows and then I hold it up to my body. And if it looks like it's going to be too small, I know how many more cast-ons I have to add on. If it looks like it's too big, I know how much to take it off, if that makes sense. For crochet, I literally just chain a really long chain and then hold it up to my body, and if it looks long, then I'll just pull off a couple of chains and then write down that number. But if it looks too small, I'll just keep chaining until it gets to the exact width that I want. Like I really don't do any swatches or anything like that. I recommend it, but I personally don't do it. For the Spider-Man bag that I'm gonna do, I'm using the exact same measurements as this bag. I did 2 panels, this front one and then the back one. Both of them were a chain of 51, and I just worked up for 45 rows on the front panel and the back panel. And then with the handle, I did a chain of 8, and then I just continued working the handle until it was about 42 inches long, and then after that I just attached it to the sides with a slip stitch, and then the bag is made. But I am gonna still show you how I did the graph. So for the sweater, I first drew out all of the different pieces that I need for the sweater. So there's the front panel, the back panel, and then the 2 arms. And so to really figure out the measurements, I just did like a little guesstimate. I did a long tail cast on of 70, and then I did 2 rows of the ribbing for the bottom of the first panel that I'm working on. Whatever I do to this panel, I'm gonna do to the other panel, so I don't have to be too specific. But this looks like it's a good length for me, or width, sorry. To figure out the length, all I do is just I continue working, and then I continue to hold it up to me, and then once this part gets to like around right here, that's when I'll start to figure out how I want to do the decreases for the top collar ribbing. And then for the arms, I don't do the arms until I have the front and the back panel together, so that when I want to measure out how long the arms are, I just put the front and the back panel on, and then I hold the arm like this onto my arm to see how long it is, and once it gets to around my wrist, that's when I'll stop working on it. Okay, so now that I have the measurements that I'm gonna use, all of the yarn that I'm gonna use, the design, plus the fact that I already started the first panel for the sweater, I'm gonna go ahead and start bringing the designs to life. So it's been like an hour or 2, and I just added every color that I was going to do on here just to see how the stripes are looking. So far I actually like it. I feel like I should have made the stripes a bit shorter. Like for every row I did 6 rows of each color. I feel like I probably should have done 3, but then that meant that I would have to do a lot of weaving in, and I don't feel like doing that. So I just went with the 6 rows per stripe. And then after this one, I'm just going to repeat the motion of adding the green, and then this grayish purple, and then this brown, the dark blue, and then back to this dusty pink. And I'm just going to repeat that until it gets to the size that I want. For the ribbing, I did a 2x2 rib, which this was purely spontaneous. It's cool. I probably should have just did a regular 1x1 rib, but you know, it works. Also, here is the width of the sweater so far. With me pushing the stitches as far as I can on the needle, it's about this size, so it'll probably be a bit wider, but I think that's good for a slightly oversized sweater. Nothing too dramatic, but this would work perfectly. Okay, so far I have this done. If I put it to my shoulders, it's almost to my waist, so I'm thinking that it's time to start doing the decreases for the shoulder and the neckline. To figure out how wide the neck hole should be, I first kind of like see where my head kind of stops at on the stitches. So just for an example, I say it's like right about here, and then I kind of make it a bit wider, making sure that both sides has the same amount of stitches on both sides, and then I'll work from here to here, and then I'll stop, and then from here to here I will cast off, and then continue working from there to there normally. And then when I go back and forth, I'm decreasing for the amount that I want the neckline to be, like how wide and deep that I want it to be, and then that's how I do the neckline. And then when I add my ribbing on the top, it's gonna kind of close it in a bit. It sounds complicated a little bit, but I'll show you. So I have a total of 70 stitches for the entire sweater. What I'm going to do is count 29 stitches on each side, which is where these little markings are. And then I'm just gonna put some little stitch markers so I can remember where the 29th stitch was. And then in between is 12 stitches right here, and that's where I'm going to cast off. So I'm gonna first knit all the way to here, which should be 29 stitches, and then I'm going to cast off these 12 stitches in the middle, and then I'm going to continue knitting these 27 stitches here. So here I'm just knitting down the row until I finish 29 stitches. Then after, I cast off 12 stitches, including the one where the stitch marker is, since I'll have an extra stitch on my needle. Then after that, I'm knitting down 29 stitches again. Okay, so now that this is casted off and there's 29 stitches on each side, what I'm gonna do is on the next row, I'm just gonna purl. And once I get to this right here, I'm just gonna decrease and then turn around and then decrease again and continue working this for 8 rows. And then after I finish that side, after casting off, I'm going to attach my yarn on this side and do the same thing on this side. For the first shoulder section, all I'm doing is knitting and purling normally until I reach the last 2 stitches of the inner side of the shoulder section, and then I'm knitting or purling the last 2 stitches to decrease. Then I'll turn the work over and decrease once more before knitting or purling the row normally. I only add the decreases on the inner section to form the shoulders. I'll repeat adding decreases for each row until I finish 8 rows in total. After finishing the 8th row of decreases, on row 9, I just cast off the entire row, and then the shoulder section is done. For the second shoulder, I just attach my yarn to the side where I'll be starting it off, and then repeat everything I did on the first shoulder section. Here is what the first panel looks like with all of the decreases. So if you can see here, we have the neckline and then the shoulder area. So when I put it on, it'll look something like this. But then after I make the other panel and connect it, I'm gonna add a ribbing. So it's gonna kind of like cinch in a little bit so that it won't be super loose or anything. I just finished making the front and back panels for the sweater, and now I'm going to show you what it looks like. So this is what the sweater looks like on. This is how it would fit if it was complete. So all I have to do now is just make the sleeves, and this is another part that I kind of want to point out with figuring out how long the sleeve should be. Once you have the front and back panel done and put together, all you're going to do is see where the front panel stops on your arm, and you can see it kind of stops at the halfway point of the top part of my arm. So all I'm going to do is create the arm and just continue working it until it reaches around this point, or a little bit smaller if you don't want it to be longer than it seems, because after you attach it, it will be slightly longer. But that's just the way that I measure out how long the sleeve should be. And for the sleeve, I already went ahead and got started. I started the ribbing the exact same way I did the bottom ribbing of the front and back panels, with a 2x2 rib stitch for 5 rows. And then for this green part, for the first part of the sleeve, I increased on every 4th stitch for 3 rows, only on the knit side of the sleeve. So while I was doing that for each row after finishing the increases, I kind of like place it on my wrist like this, just to see how wide the sleeve is actually going to be. And usually I make my sleeves really wide, but for this sweater I don't want them to be super wide like I usually do. So I only did the increases for 3 rows, and now I'm just going to work the sleeve regularly, and this is how wide the sleeve will be. So it's a little bit of space for me, but it will definitely fit my arm. And if you're making this and you want it to be wider, you can increase as much as you want to, but just make sure that you're putting it on your arm like this and you're seeing how wide the sleeve is going to be. So here I've gotten halfway through with the arm, but this is just a little check to see how far left I have to do. And it looks like I'll have just a few more color changes left before it reaches the part where this is right here. I can't really point to it right now, but Before I get started on the bag, I first download the graph photo, whether it's from Pinterest or one I created on Stitch Fiddle, onto my iPad and add it to Procreate. I then take the time to count all the boxes based on the color and write down how many boxes there are, which indicates how many stitches you'll need for that specific color. Doing this saves me so much time while working on the project so that I won't have to stop and count the graph every 2 seconds. For the bag, I first chained 51 and did regular single crochets for 5 rows. Once I finished the 5th row, I counted to the middle of the row and added a stitch marker. I then counted how many stitches wide and how many stitches long the graph is. The graph is 25 stitches wide, so all I did was divide 25 by 2, which got me 12.5, and then I counted 12 down from the middle stitch marker. I inserted a stitch marker to the stitch I counted to, then counted from that stitch marker until I reached 25 on the other side, then added another stitch marker. So, counting from the left, I have a stitch marker on the 14th stitch and the 38th stitch. The middle stitch marker can be removed. I then single crocheted until I reached the stitch marker. The stitch markers indicate the first stitch or box of the graph. For this first row, it says to use the background color for 9 rows, then switch to the black, and then the background color again. I'm already using black for the background color, so this entire row is just worked normally. Always make sure to add your stitch marker back to the same stitch after working into it to remember where the graph starts. Another thing to keep in mind is that the graph is worked from both sides. So the right side of the project is worked from right to left, and when you turn your work over to start the next row, you want to work the graph from left to right on the wrong side of the project. It's good to place a stitch marker on one side so you'll know which is the right side and which is the wrong side of the project. I usually add mine to the wrong side of the project. For the second row, I'll be starting from the left side of the graph. It says to work 8 stitches with the background color, then switch to black for 1 stitch, then 7 stitches with red, and then 1 stitch with black, and then 9 stitches with the background color. So for mine, I'll be doing 9 stitches with black, then switch to red, then back to black. After doing the 9 stitches with black, it's time to switch to the red color. To switch to red, I first start the stitch with the black as if I'm working a single crochet, but before I finish the single crochet, I add the red yarn to my hook to use that to finish the single crochet. I then finish the red section of the graph. After that, since I have to switch back to black, I cut a really long tail of the black to create a small ball of yarn that will only be used in the section that it's attached to. You're going to have to create small balls of yarn for each color change you need to do in order for the graph to be neat. After the ball is created, I use the red to make a single crochet, but before I finish it, I took the black yarn and attached it to my hook to finish the single crochet and then to finish the rest of the black section of the graph. After I reached the stitch marker, which indicates the first and last stitch of the graph, I worked the rest of the row with normal single crochets, then chained 1 and turned my work. For the third row, we're back to the right side of the project, so the graph will be worked from right to left. It's almost the exact same as the previous row, so you're going to repeat the instructions on how to work the graph. The only difference is that you're not adding color, so to switch to a color that's already been added, just take the yarn that you need to switch to and use it to create a normal single crochet. Then work the amount of stitches you need with that color, then switch back to the other color again by taking the other color and using it to single crochet, then finish that row of the graph normally. Once the graph was finished, I worked 5 rows of single crochet before ending the front panel. For the back panel of the bag, all I did was single crochet with black for 42 rows. For the handle of the tote bag, all I did was chain 8 and then work 2 rows of single crochet with black and then 2 rows with the red. I do this continuously until the handle is 116 rows long. To attach the handle to the bag, all I do is slip stitch the handle to the sides of one panel and then repeat that on the other panel to attach them together. Then turn the bag inside out and slip stitch the ends of the straps together. Then the bag is done. Here is what the final sweater looks like. I just took it out of the dryer. I washed it on a hand wash setting on cool water with gentle soap, and then I just dried it like I dry all my other clothes. It's already fuzzy from the wool in the sweater, and after I took it out of the washer and dryer, it looks exactly the same. It's just a bit more fluid because after I finished making it, it was very stiff, and I was like, yeah, I have to throw this in the washing machine so it can just be livable, if that makes sense. But this is the sweater. I really like it. It came out really cute. The length was exactly where I wanted it to be. The sleeves are good. I feel like I should have made it just a tiny, like I probably should have did one more row of increases, but it's perfectly fine. It's not stiff or it's not tight or anything. It's at the perfect size for my arms. I'm used to it being oversized, but I wanted to try something that was the perfect size for my arms, and this is perfect. This is what it looks like from the back. And yeah, I like this sweater a lot. It's really cozy. I really like this yarn, even though this yarn was $9 a skein, so it was pretty expensive, but one skein did get a lot done. But it's probably because I did stripes, so that's why I didn't have to buy multiple. It's really cute, cozy. I like it. It goes with my wardrobe. So now I'm going to show you the Spider-Man tote bag here. This is what it looks like. I feel like I should have did a different color for the border, but at the same time for my no face bag I did the exact same thing. So the only difference is like the Spider-Man face, because he has a spider web on his mask, there's a lot more detail in it, so that's why it kind of looks like a bit off to me, but at the same time I think it looks pretty good for it being having all that detail in it and everything. I'm probably gonna line the bag on my own time once I learn how to sew with the sewing machine, because I don't want to do it by hand anymore. Hand sewing is just personally not for me, but I like the tote bag. It's cute. This handle is a lot smaller than the other handle. The other handle was 122 rows. This one I did 116 rows because I ran out of the black yarn, but I think that made it the perfect length for me. And then when you add stuff, it is gonna stretch a little bit unless I do line the handles. But the bag came out just as I wanted. The sweater came out just as I wanted, and hopefully this video was really helpful for you. If you have any questions on things that I didn't really talk about in this video, just let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!